advanced web applications and full stack, the last part of this series. So full stack, it basically means that we have already learned the way to build Node.js and Express the backend, and then we have worked with the React in the frontend, and now we are gluing and combining them together, and thus we are getting a full stack application. So basically when we are talking about a full stack application, we have a client and we have a server. In the server side we can have databases and whatever we will need to have there or want to have there. That's the server side, and then there is this client side, and when we have them both we have a full stack application. And on this course we have to use the React in the client side and Node.js and Express with MongoDB on the backend side. And with combining these two we get a full stack application. So now the aim is to build actually two apps. We are dividing the front end and the back end. They are living in their own folder structure and they are not talking to each other in a code level. They are talking to each other through APIs. So the back end is with Node.js and Express and the front end is with React. And then the key is to have the fluent communication here, and this communication is done through APIs that this backend is providing. And then we are just basically transferring JSON data from backend to the frontend. Of course, if we have images, then we are sharing images and such, but that's a different story. So frontend calls these endpoints and then formats and shows the data. So for example, if we wanted to get some poems from the backend, we will get that as a JSON data, raw text, and then we can use whatever HTML and CSS formatting we want to use in the front end. And in addition to this, let's add cross-origin resource sharing, so called CORS. When you are doing web development, or even if you are just surfing in the internet, you might sometimes see some CORS errors. This means that there is cross-origin resource sharing. It means that the backend and the frontend are communicating together, and with these CORS settings we can set that only this frontend application can access to this backend, or this backend should not share its data to, for example, China or United States or South America or whatever. I don't even know if you can do that kind of. Well, if you basically would block every IP addresses maybe then. But yeah, it's a way to do definition to what client and what server can have access. But we don't have any more theory here. Let's just go to the code. Here is the code. Well, there is pretty much nothing here. Now we have two different folders. We have the server side and the client side. The client is now completely empty. There is nothing. On the server side, I have just copy-pasted my old version what we were using when we were doing the authentication. So what we have here, we have these routes, for example, this user, we have the register, we have the login and the list and such. And in the middleware we have this validate token part. So we have this JWT functionality now here in the back end. We will add something here, but first we will do the client installation and then, let's say, in a bit combine these two. So let's have a terminal here. So there are two folders. Let's go to the server folder. We have already here a Git folder. Let's remove it. Now there is no Git folder that we would not need. We can init Git here. Now we have a Git folder here, which is much better. Then let's go to the client. We are using the same method to build the client as we have previously done with React. So npm create write latest. I'm calling it client, and we are using React with TypeScript, and now we have client that as a client folder. So let's go to the client folder and move everything back a bit and then remove this client like this. Let's do this npm install, and then let's go to this root directory where we have this client and server. We can also here do the npm init So now we have a simple project also here. We got this package JSON here, and now we can build our scripts to run the whole application with one script. So let's start here. So we have two different scripts. Let's say here we have the start script, and now in the client side we have also scripts here. Let's have the start script here in the root. So it's called client and it's npm run dev, and this server is npm start, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we had this start there. But these are not in this folder, so we need to, there are plenty of ways to give how we can go to the correct folder, but we can use this prefix client, and here we have a prefix server, so it's using that folder. And now we can start them, but how we start these both? We can use concurrently. So let's here in the root part install that kind of a thing called concurrently. Like that. And then we can have a here as a last command called dev, which is now concurrently starting these both, and we need to have this escape character because we are using these commands here. So npm run server, it's running this script, and then also the second script npm run client, like this. And now we should be able to start it. npm run dev. Now it's running those both concurrently. And now here the node1 is running the backend, and its server is running on port 8000. So let's see what's happening there. There is something, and we also have this frontend, our React application, and it's here in the localhost 5173 colon here. So now we have the both up and running, the backend and the frontend with one command. If that's what we want, we can also of course run them separately if we wish. Then let's start the developing. We are not that much working on the server, but let's go here on the server.ts. This is the place where we set up everything. For example, I have now changed that we are using a full stack DB here. So we will need a module for this course system. Let's install it. And now we can have this course part here. And now let's just have the settings here. And of course I will need to import it. Let's first import it. So clearly I'm missing these TypeScript definitions for this course, so let's install them. So now we can continue with this. We are just setting that this origin, what we can have here is the http://localhost:5173. So this is the front-end client that now can access to this. And then we are setting also that option success status 200, and it's options success status. Yes, now this is the front end is now accessible to this our backend. This should be enough for our backend. As our front end is still pretty dummy, let's go there. As we have not pretty much packages we will install now a bit more. So npm install react router DOM is something that we will need. Then we will need MUI parts. Well, I don't know if we need them, but it doesn't matter. They are not bad things. And yes, I have a typo there. So now there are plenty of packages in the frontend. So what's the plan? Well, the plan is to have this our client, to have a navigation, and then we have able to log in and register to our application. So once again we can get rid of these irrelevant parts of our application. Let's have this here, full stack app. Now we have a full stack app, and then we can get rid of that CSS file, and now we have the full stack app here. So we will first need the routing part, so import that. So let's have the navigation bar here. That's the other component we will need to build. Then we will have those routes, and we will need to have the browser router. Like this. And next, let's build 3 routes. So we will have a home, we will have a login, and we will have a register. And of course these paths are quite easy part. Like this. This is actually pretty much our complete app here in the main React file. We will now of course need those components. And then we will of course need to import those components. And now they are imported. And yeah, this was a navigation bar, but I now name it as a navigation. Let's drop the bar from there. Now let's go through all these and let's add some content there. Now we have content on every part, then we can just start using them. Let's go first with this navigation. I will import a lot of stuff. So basically there are these MUI parts, and then we can build the navigation with that. Actually I will just copy paste the whole navigation. This uses this MUI part, so there is not much to think about. But the thing here is that we are using this JWT, which we still don't have. Let's build that, but we have a, let's just remove these. We will build that later on. Let's remove also this on click. Now we have a cool app. Let's remove, actually we don't need this at all. Now there is navigation for us. Let's go to this home and let's show some poems here. Yes, this is home. So let's use h2. Welcome to poems. But we don't have any way to get to this home. Let's add it to our navigation. it's just the root item, so home. So welcome to poems. So it's working, and now, so after we have logged in, we can then fetch the poem. So let's go and build the register part first. So let's have this as a h2, the title. That's better. I will once again copy paste some code. So this is merely to have this. Now we are having this on click here. Let's get rid of that. And actually we will need to get rid of this and this too. And I will also add few lines here. So we are now getting from this material this box, button and text field. Now we have a nice theme. We can set up username and password and then register. So we are using these boxes, and then there are two text fields. Last one is a password, the first one is the username. And we will need states for these username and password. They are pretty simple, nothing new here. We are just using useStates here, and both are string and both are empty in the beginning, and then we will just have the on change. If something is changing in this text field, we are just putting that new value to the username, and the same goes with the password. And then when we are clicking the actual button, we are calling fetch data method, so we need to first then build that fetch data. This is a async method. We are calling the backend. We have a username, which is string, and password, which is also string. So here we are fetching this with this username and password. We are taking them and then trying to call the backend. So if there is an error, we will of course then console log that error, and someone can start debugging the application. So we will make a call to this our backend. And this call has to be a post call, so we will use the method post, and we will set some headers, and yes, these are like JSON settings. And then finally the actual body part, which is the username and password. So we will use this JSON stringify and give it this what we have here. So this username and password. So we are getting some kind of a response then, and if this response is not okay, then we have some kind of an error. Let's throw it. Yes, and otherwise we have data. From this response we can just take the JSON data out of that. And let's try to log that. Now we should be getting something. So let's try to register. So we got error connection refused. Of course our server is not running on the port 5050, it's running on port 8000. Let's try it again. So now we have here the block get course policy. And the reason is that although I made these course options, I never put them to any use. So let's add them here. So our application need to use, of course, these course settings. So let's have them here, and this course is getting now as a parameter this course options. Now everything should be okay. And as you can see, it is okay, but now the endpoint is wrong. So let's go and see our endpoint is here. User register, let's see. Let's remove this S. And actually there is no API at all. As I have here set that it should be minimum 5, now I'm sending 2 little characters. Now we got a user registered successfully. Now we can continue. So this lets our user to register, so then we can just check that if this response status was 200, so it was successful, and we can just go further. Window location equals login. Now it moved us to login part. So the register part is now functioning. So we can register. Next thing is to log in. This login part, it's not that different. So let's just add this once again, our header to this file component, and I'm going to then add some use states here. Of course, we have here also the username and password, and then we have the login part, which is very similar to this register part. We have also these text fields here, and we will need some imports. And now we have the login part, and once again we will need to build this fetch data. Let's copy paste this our register part to this login part like this, and now let's modify it. So we are not using this register, we are using login. We are using post, and we are stringifying this, and if the response is not okay, then we are having an error, and then we are parsing this to JSON, and now we are checking that what this data actually is. So that's something that we need to check. So if data token, so if there is a token, then we can have it here. So we will use local storage set item token, and this data has then this token, and now we have set the item there, and then we can move to the home part. Let's see, this might even work. So test, 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 test. Something happened. It said us that welcome to the poems. So we have moved to the another, and here in the local storage we have some kind of a token, so it is working, which is nice. Okay, then let's go back to this navigation part, some kind of a use state for this. JWG. So this might be string or it might be null. So if we are using this application without logging in, then it's definitely null. If the user has logged in, authenticated, then it has some kind of a string there. And how do we get that? So it is here the token. How we get that to our application? We can use, for example, use effect here. we are checking that if local storage get item, and this item is this token, if it exists, then set JWT with this local storage get item token, and we are missing one n here. And when this is being called, it is being called when this is about to change. Yes, I'm missing here. This was in the wrong part. Now it's going okay. So now, for example, here in the menu, now we are logged in. Why should we see login and register links when we are logged in? So let's get rid of these. So if there is not this token, then we can have these buttons, login and register. Here we can actually move this home button away, and then if there is not, if this JWT is existing, then we can have this log out button, which is of course quite nice. And now it's complaining that we have too many components here. Let's have an empty fragment here. Now it is working. Now we are logged in and we have only the home and logout button. Let's build this logout functionality. So basically only this button needs this on-click event, and we are having here the actual method. And what does it do? It removes this item token and it sets this our JWT to be null. And then we can just go to the back to the home. So let's see. Now we log out. We are here in the home page, and then we can log in. Now we are logged in and our menu has only this logout part. So it is working. Okay, we are satisfied with this. So our navigation is working, our JWT is working. Now let's try to fetch these poems from the backend. So first of all, I will just copy paste this. We will use this JWT also here in the home component. And let's copy paste also these. Well, we are not needing everything, but let's take these. And now the task is to have some way to get the poems. Let's build a button, just a button to fetch those poems from the backend. So we have this welcome text, and then we can just check that if there is this JWT. And if it's not, then we are just giving a user a message that please log in to fetch the poems, like this. And then we have the other part that if we have the JWT token, then we can just have a button here. I'm just copy paste this button code here. So now we have a button. It has a display flex and justify content and some margin. And the idea is now that now we can on click this fetch poems. And let's then have the function here. We will need some place for these poems. And of course it's some kind of a state here. So poems this use state, it's not a string, it's not null, it's I poem array, and as a default it's an empty array. Now we need to do this I poem interface. This poem has 3 values. It has this ID, which is of course number, then it has this actual poem, which is a string, and then this VIP status, which is of course boolean. Let's have the fetch here. Then we need to have some kind of an endpoint. Let's see if we have any endpoint for this kind of a thing. Let's see what we have. We have APIs to get the images. Let's then have here one new API. I am just copy pasting some code here. So we have now API poems, and we need to use this validate token middleware, which is presented here. So let's take this one also to this our index page, and we will need this iPoem. Let's have it here like this, and now our server has this API endpoint poems. It will only check that if the token is valid, so we are authenticated, we have the right to do this, then it will provide us this simple 3 poems array as a JSON. So now we can continue our work here. So we have this API endpoint. This time we can easily use get. There is no reason to have any post call, and our API endpoint was using the get method. Here in the authorization part we are now providing the token, and in this token we are the first giving the word bearer, and then we have the actual token what we have. Which is here in the JWT. And yes, we could have this actually inside try block. And this might throw some errors, so let's catch them. Now we are taking care of the error, then let's continue. So this is getting us the response, and of course our method should be async. And now after this fetch is done, let's just check that if this response is not okay, we can then once again throw the error. But otherwise it was not failure, so we can then have this data and then just set poems to have this data. Now we have the poems fetched, and as this is button is fetching the poems, then we can just show them. We can just use this use state poems. Let's map it through. Let's take the poem and the index of the poem. We will have a div here. Let's have the key, this index. And otherwise we can just have the, let's say h3 poem, and then we have the poem number in the poem ID. Well, it's not a number, but some kind of a ID. And yes, there is a typo. We should have only poem. And I am missing a parenthesis here. And then let's have the actual poem here. Like this. Let's see what happens. Nothing happened. And the error here was authentication token was already outdated, so it was not of course updated in the frontend. We have done nothing to handle the case that it's outdated in the, as we have set in the server, it's like a few minutes only. But nevertheless, let's just log in again. And now we are logged in and we can fetch poems, so they are here. And of course there is no VIP status here. Let's build some way to have a VIP status. So if we have this VIP, then we have just a VIP here, and otherwise we have nothing. Now we have probably have the, okay, the token was already outdated. It has the class VIP, so we can then add the VIP in our CSS. Let's have it like this. Now we have the, without any refreshing, the poem is now bolded. So this is how the React works as a frontend when we have a backend with Node.js and Express, and also with MongoDB. So now you can see that we have this same kind of a code here in the home and here in the navigation. Maybe this JWT should live here and it would be given as a props. Also this set JWT would be given as a props to this navigation part, and then only the JWT would be given as a props to this home component. That might be a better solution. You can then continue working with this application, but now we have a working frontend, we have a working backend, we have a way to start them both. Here in the root package we have defined ways to start the client and the server. So we are now basically having two projects living in the own folders. Client is living in a client folder and the server is living in a server folder. So as a conclusion, gluing the front end and the back end together it is not that hard. It is something that you need to do if you are a full stack developer, but it's not that hard. The key point is to have a clear API endpoint in the backend, and then the front end can easily use that. And JSON is of course very handy when we are transferring data from backend to the front end or from front end to backend. This was this series. Now you are a full stack developer. Congratulations to you.